All right. Well, happy Friday. Happy Friday, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Learning Tech Talks, where we are exploring the landscape of learning tech while cutting through the fluff. And you know what? We've been having some technical difficulties getting fired up here, so we'll get it figured out along the way. But today I'm joined by Edward Prentice, and he is from a company called YepNation. We're going to be talking about the metaverse. Now, you can see I am all festive and in holiday garb because this is the last Learning Tech Talks of 2021. So I'm looking forward to the conversation because today we're going to be talking about the metaverse and what that means, what that looks like, how that might impact some of the stuff that we're doing as learning professionals. But before we get into it, Edward, I'm doing a check to make sure you're still with me. You good?
I missed that, Chris.
I just was doing a sound check to make sure you can hear me and that you're still here. You're coming through fine.
Yeah, yeah. Can you hear me?
Yep, you're good to go. You're good on my end, Edward.
Wait a minute. Okay, you want me to just give some background?
Well, no, I just wanted to make sure we'll do some background piece. I just wanted to make sure you could hear me and we could all hear you. And it looks like we're good.
Yeah, it's still going in and out, but I can just keep going.
Okay. All right. Well, first things first. While you're connecting, let's do this. And again, you're chopping in and out, so we'll see where this goes. And I'll talk a little bit about the metaverse while we're getting into it. If we have too many connection issues, although it kind of doesn't make sense for me to ask you where you are in the world if you're not here, and we just lost Edward. So I will go ahead and. We'll see what happens. This may be a solo episode of me talking about the metaverse. Now, the good news is, what I can tell you is Edward has shared his content with me, so I do have some of that. But Edward, if you can hear me, where are you in the world right now? I know it's somewhere where we're having connectivity issues.
Yeah, hopefully this doesn't go out. Basically, where I'm at now, the Lord kind of led me to this destination at this point, where I can have a program where I can help at-risk young women go from negative pathways in life and bring them into positive pathways in life via training them on how to create digital technology.
Okay. And you're in Chicago, correct?
Say that again.
You're in Chicago?
Yes. The organization has always been in Chicago. I'm from Indiana, and it's always been in Chicago.
Okay. All right. Well, so to give some context too, for those of you who may not know Edward and our connection, Edward and I actually met. I'm trying to think. It's been a few years now. We met through a local L&D group in the Milwaukee area called the Executive Learning Exchange. So the two of us got to know each other there, and then have had a couple different talks on the metaverse. So other icebreaker question, because everybody knows where I am, and don't be fooled by the reindeer or the snowflakes. I'm still in Milwaukee, even though we don't have snow on the ground yet. We'll see what happens here with Edward on the way in and out. But I'm going to go ahead and switch to the icebreaker. For those of you who are watching, I'm going to chime in on this. We'll see if Edward ends up joining me on this. But I'm curious, and this is actually inspired by one of my favorite holiday things, which is Olaf's Christmas tradition, which when you have 6 kids tends to be the topic at hand. But I'm curious, for those of you commenting in, if you have a favorite holiday tradition. And if Edward comes back in, there you go. Edward, I can. So we're doing the icebreaker, and I'm curious what your favorite holiday tradition is.
One thing we like to do is my son is older now, so I have to try and do it with young nieces and nephews. We would have the tree. It's a little extra work on our end, but you'd have the tree, and we put the gifts under there, and we'd have a little tape on it, and the box would say hiding place number 1, hiding place number 2, and we get toys that any one of the kids would like. So then when they go down there, and we'd hear them scuffling around the house trying to find the actual gift and see who gets the gift. So in the end, everybody, it's two boxes. So it's one gift box with the note on it, hiding place number 3 or 4 or 5, and then they actually get the actual gift. So sometimes we make a mistake and we have to switch gifts. Like, who got the doll? We got like 3 boys here. So
Wait, so you buy presents that any of the kids would like, and it's not necessarily, each one has a specific thing. You just get some and then you hide them, and then whoever finds them gets what they find.
yeah, but they all get specific gifts. But then we have this one
Okay.
that we do that it could be like a game, a puzzle, or something like that any one of them would like. But you can't get something that's specifically for girls or specifically for boys, because like, hey, wait a minute, I found this.
Okay, so it's not all the presents then. That was the part that was throwing me for a loop.
No.
I'm like, so it's all the presents? The kids have no idea?
I'd have to walk the plank for that.
I was going to say, I can't imagine with my 6 kids if I was like, well, I'm just going to buy from a thing and what you get.
Yeah, they'd have you tied and fit.
I would be in big trouble if I did that. Well, okay. All right. Well, so let's shift gears a little bit, because you talked, and it looks like your connection's much better than it was before. So I think we're in a good spot there.
I changed locations.
Well, you know what? That'll do it every time. So let's talk a little bit. Again, you gave a high level conversation of who you are and what you do, but I'm kind of curious, your background. Was technology your background? Was learning your background? Because you're in, and you tell me if my summary of your company is right, but really it's designed to help underprivileged girls. Are you primarily focused on underprivileged youth
Yes.
Okay. So that's kind of the focus area, and teaching them tech skills and building immersive tech. How did you get to that point? Like, what made you suddenly decide this is what I want to do?
Well, it definitely wasn't suddenly. I'm a pretty spiritual guy, and to go along with that, when I was much younger, I didn't have a lot of resources back then, and actually for a period of time, I slept in my car. So until the Lord got me to the point. So it was a young lady that I had befriended. Her name was Sheila, and she had a lot of potential. She was beautiful, very intelligent, but her home where she went after, school and everything just wasn't good. And back then we didn't have social media and all of that. So I wasn't able to really keep in touch with her. I was always, we never did date or anything. I'm a pretty big guy, so I was kind of like her big brother to protect her from some of the bad guys, I guess you could say. So then over time, we lost touch with each other. And about 3 or 4 years after that, I was driving down the street, and I looked to the side, and there she was. They had got her into prostitution and everything like that. And I'm trying to hold it together because it breaks me up every time. And at the time, I had no resources. I couldn't. I was just looking at her. We was looking at each other, and I couldn't save her because I had nothing at the time. Okay. So then a few years after that, I found out she was murdered. And I knew what happened. It's probably some sort of retribution or something like that. But then my mind flashed back to that time where if I had something, I could have, got her to a program or something like that. So then the years passed, and the Lord helped me build that organization. That's where I met you with Dirk. And we got to be a pretty big size. We had 30 employees. We were doing, Fortune 500 work and BP and Baxter. And that was just a hole in my heart. As I got to do something about that. So basically, I wound down that company and started this up, and that's what this company does. We try and get young women away from those negative trajectories into these positive trajectories. So that's where that comes from. And the YEP stands for Youth Engagement Program.
Okay. And so, was your background? Did you know you wanted to go into education or tech? I mean, was that any way, shape, or form when you were, younger that you thought that's what you were going to do, or did it just through this experience kind of put you on that trajectory?
My dad went to school for engineering, and I went to school for engineering, so we're kind of in the same zone. And I always liked to. When I was younger, I used to take things apart and try and put them back together. For a minute, it didn't work, but as I got older, they actually started working. so, so, that, so that I always like doing things and helping people. Like back when that time when I didn't have resources that I mentioned earlier, and if I didn't put up 100 ceiling fans, I didn't put up nothing. And that's what I did to make money and worked on cars and things like that. So
Okay.
I've always gravitated to doing something, building something, making something work. And then
Okay.
as the Lord helped me, I can't say I did that by myself. No way.
Okay.
Build that company up. It always centered around solving a problem. In this
Okay.
case, solving problems with technology and bringing vastly expensive technology down where organizations that could really use it can afford it. So that's where this
Okay.
program is at now.
Okay. Well, and I think that's one of the things for those who may just be joining or getting into the feed. We were having some technical difficulties on the beginning, but really the conversation today is about we're talking about the metaverse, and you're going to see as we go into 2022. I've got the lineup kind of planned. There's going to be a lot more talking about what's going on with metaverse, what's going on with immersive tech, things like that. And so, with this, that's a part of your goal through all this. Now, granted, you've got really a social justice mission behind what you're trying to do, but in many ways, to your background, it's about trying to democratize this immersive tech for organizations. Yes, it's trying to make it accessible and available to organizations who may be thinking, we just can't do that. We don't have the budget or the resources to do that. Is that fair?
Oh, that is definitely fair.
Okay.
And
Okay.
it's a two-pronged approach. In order for me to help these young women, I need projects. So because we,
Okay.
we have to work on the actual projects, and we're not a 501c3, we're actually a sub S corp. So we have to get work from businesses to pay for our program. And then so what we've done with this whole our MC platform, we designed it in a way where it's easy to teach someone with no programming skills how they can go into that code and create another version of it for a new client. And then in that
Okay.
case, we're able to bring the price down to where someone can afford it. For example, Junior Achievement is a great example. Their target audience is elementary kids, and they're having problems reaching them in this whole COVID environment because their
I
business model.
I was gonna say I've got a ton of friends in the K-12 space, and reaching kids in this kind of hybrid virtual environment is
Yeah.
not easy. It is not. It's
And
hard
see,
enough to
we're
keep
now we're
adults
in the
focused on
roadblocks. We're
Zoom.
teaching the young women roadblocks because all these kids
Okay.
are in the roadblocks. Now we can have created an actual roadblocks program for an organization that has. You got to make it fun. You can't put just straight up stuff in there. You got to have it
Okay.
fun, but you can have your content in there versus them playing. Most of the roadblock stuff are violent games. If you pay attention to them, most of them are, even though
Okay.
they're fun, you're always shooting somebody or hitting somebody with a rock or something like that. So we're bringing more, educational and fun to the program at a price that organizations can afford.
Okay. Okay. Got it. Okay. So this is going to be really and a good example of something somewhat similar that I posted about actually recently, at least with this Roblox example, was Pepsi had worked with a company called, I think, Blockworks, to actually create a sim in Minecraft for what they were doing with Lean Six Sigma. So it sounds like similarly, one of the areas you're leaning in is with Roblox, similar type thing, taking this existing technology that's out there and say, how can we use this and take it from an entertainment game to actually use it for educational purposes, but that's actually connecting with people in a familiar way.
Right, right. And on a business, that the Roblox is definitely more for the elementary and that age
Okay.
level, but our primary focus is the business side. Where
Okay.
we're using the same technology that you see in the 2K21s and Grand Theft Autos, the humanistic characters, and you could do a
Okay.
lot with game development if you had
Okay.
it at a price level that businesses can afford. So now
Okay.
we're using whole multiplayer technology where we can have, say, for example, a prospect log in as an avatar and a salesperson log in as an avatar, and they look at a 3D representation of a large piece of equipment that person sells, which in real life is kind of tough. You can't bring
Yeah.
a big medical
No, I mean,
device,
I
to
when I worked at
to a
GE, that was
hospital.
tough. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
You can't carry around an MR machine in
Right.
your duffel bag to be like, hey, here, let me
Right.
show you how this works.
Yeah, in places like Medtronic, they're doing even robotic training. So the fact that we can create an actual working robot inside of something that your humanistic avatar can go in and look at, that's what we're trying to do. And then there's a lot of vertical markets that could use something like that, whether they got a complex piece of equipment or a large piece of equipment. You could put it into this 3D space with avatars.
Okay. Okay. So that's well. So okay, we're getting into some of the weeds. So I actually want to back up a little bit because one of the things that some folks may not be as familiar with is we're talking about the metaverse, but some people might be like, I've either heard of it. I mean, there's a lot of talk about this. Facebook changed their name to Meta, which created some buzz around that. People's definition of metaverse is very different. So I'm curious from your perspective, when you're talking about the metaverse, what does that actually mean? Like, how do you explain that to people in a way that makes sense?
My explanation is the metaverse is where you take a 3D representation of yourself and others and put them into a 3D representation of the real world, and you interact within that space with your 3D self and that 3D world. That's basically what
Okay.
it is. So, I mean, Second Life was that back in the day.
Okay.
Same thing. Whenever you go into something and you're represented as something in that space, and that's how I kind of explain it. That's your metaverse, and then we're in the universe now because we're all humans in the world. That's we're the universe. But then you go into
Okay.
this new space with the new you, and you're in the metaverse.
Okay. All right. So I think what's funny is I think sometimes people have this thought of what it is and they have a very specific use case. They're like, well, I just think of the metaverse as this. But going back to your Roblox example, it's like, well, anytime you're basically creating a digital copy of you, whether it actually looks and feels like you or doesn't matter. If you're creating a digital copy of you and interacting in a digital environment, that's what we mean, generally speaking, when we talk about the metaverse.
Exactly.
Okay. Okay. So it doesn't even necessarily. So let me get this because this will get some of the VR AR people spun up. Would you say that you have to have hardware, right, wearable gear to engage with the metaverse?
No,
No.
it's a lot of people are mixing up VR, AR, XR, all that type of stuff. So
Yep.
you could be on your laptop and your 3D avatar. Let's take 2K21. That's a lot of
Okay.
people have seen that, their kids or whatnot. So they log in as basketball players. So they're in the 2K21 metaverse at the time. And you see all of the big players in there like Nike and Amazon. They're all in there too. So that's a real world inside of 2K21. That's a worldwide platform. So people
Okay.
from around the world can log into that metaverse, that sports metaverse, and do things. So really is your 3D digital representation of yourself inside of a 3D space that could be specialized for anything, and you do something in that space for that. It's like Madden football. You're in
Okay.
that metaverse for football, and you got
Okay.
your football player. So that's how that works. And then your question about the VR goggles, that just gives you the actual VR representation of that. And all of the things that we do, we can turn that into a VR space too. But everybody don't have those, so you
Yes.
can't roll it out. And true metaverse is not all VR. What metaverse means is no matter what you have at any time, you can log into this digital world. You could do it on your phone, your laptop, your desktop, your goggles. Eventually, you're gonna have the glasses. So any technology that can log you into that 3D space.
Okay. Well, and I think that's a really important distinction for people who either may be relatively new to the space or even just doing this, because there is a lot of buzz around, well, the metaverse is brand new. It's this brand new thing, and we're just discovering what it is. And really, when you look at it at its core, what we're talking about here, it's not new. It's evolving. It's changing in terms of what we can do and the capabilities and how easy it is to create different metaverses to engage with. But really, in your example, back in the day of playing Super Mario 1, in some regards, it was kind of a generation of the metaverse, because like, well, you had a digital version of yourself, Mario, and you were engaging in this digital world. Now, granted, we've come a long way since then, but this isn't like metaverse isn't something that just came out in 2020, 2021.
Right, exactly. Anytime where you can log in as a representation of yourself into an environment, that is a metaverse. And then now what's going on in that environment is specific to that environment, but it's still you've replaced yourself in that 3D space with your avatar.
Okay. Okay. So now that's really important for people to think about, because sometimes when I have conversations with folks, they will say, and I had one recently where someone said, "Well, we're not even considering anything with the metaverse at this point because nobody has VR goggles." And I said, "Well, wait, who said you have to have VR goggles to, you know?" You don't need to have VR goggles or wearables to actually consider the metaverse as part of your strategy.
Right. A lot of people is driven by the big guns, like your, Facebook and things like that, and all of the advertisement around that. So they see that and they think that's the metaverse, because
Right.
all they're put, of course, Facebook owns Oculus, so they have one of the premier VR goggles out there. So they're gonna push, in order to be part of this metaverse, you need to get you some Oculus glasses. But you could be on your iPad, your laptop. Again, you're viewing the inside space. The only thing VR is for is virtual reality, where you put that over your eyes, and of
Okay.
course, augmented is where you got your phone and you're augmenting reality with, Pokemon type stuff, where
Yeah.
stuff comes up on your phone in relation to what your phone's camera is seeing. And XR is just a combination of all of that extended reality.
Well, and it's funny because Toby brought up a good point about the metaverse and the whole you have to have VR goggles. I agree. Saying you have to have VR to use the metaverse or consider the metaverse as part of your strategy is like saying, well, you have to have an LMS, otherwise you're not doing learning in your company. And it's like, well, no, they're not synonymous with each other. They're actually, yes, they can be used in conjunction with one another, but they're not separate. So given that, I am curious from your side. So let's talk a little bit about where people may be considering using some of this, because obviously your company is helping democratize this. Actually, before we go into that though, I am curious because you've been doing this now for some time, and you talked about actually democratizing access to this technology, which is an important capability, because one of the things that has come up in the comments, and I will agree with, is this used to be a little more far-reaching for folks. It was something that was on the horizon. It did require, and I just lost Edward, so I'll bring him back in when he's in. So this won't be really a question, but more of a discussion point until he gets back, is the fact that I will say we have seen this change over time in that, and Edward, you let me know if you can hear me. I think he's back. He can kind of chime in as we go here, and I'll talk about this, because one of the things that's a bit of a myth that still sticks with metaverse, and honestly, I don't want to talk about metaverse and VR simultaneously because they're not, but there's a lot of connections between them. But one of the things is a lot of people assume this is a very far off, super expensive, super unattainable, super unreachable capability for their organization. And honestly, when Edward and I first met, that was one of the things that I was so impressed with, was he really was working with these folks to actually democratize access and to make it possible for people to get access to it. So I'll let him share back, when he chimes back in. But that is not the case. And if you've watched Learning Tech Talks, yeah, I know. Exactly, Toby. Edward, we need to
Hello?
make a digital, hey, you're back.
Yeah,
We're
if you
Toby,
notice, every time I move, I'm in a different place in the house.
you know what? It's kind of like a
It's
magic
funny.
trick I
I have the
did.
fastest. I got the fastest internet Xfinity can have, and now I don't have nothing because they're working on our subdivision. I was like, this is crazy.
It's fine. It's fine. But my question I was asking, because as you were connecting in and out, was the fact that a lot of people have this perception that this is super expensive and unattainable. And that there was some truth to that in the past, but I'm curious with your company specifically, and just to help people understand how this is evolving, how has the tech changed to make this more accessible for folks? Because it can seem like this is just way out there. This is something that we'll never be able to do.
Well, one thing that we've done, I invested a lot of money on the front end for our application. You remember that's what we're doing. We're trying to train young women how to do this. So we've
Yep.
actually developed, a virtual space. We developed virtual sales programs. All of that is done on our end. So then we can offer those platforms at a low enough price because we didn't put all of the heavy coding and the 3D and all of that into it already.
Okay.
With the purpose of having it as a platform that we can train the young women how to go in and change images, change some code, and then turn it into a sales program or turn it into a communications program for a youth program and have it at a price low enough that they can afford. The whole purpose of it, the technology is out here. The problem is all of the effort is going to the gaming space because that's where the money is at. so,
Okay.
so that no, even when we were doing it, our programmers were like, "What are you doing?" Well, we're trying to create programming that somebody that doesn't know how to program can program. Like what?
Okay.
So
Okay.
that's where we're at. We can offer these at a price because we actually have the product line.
Okay. So you're actually you've actually designed the software that's tapping into the tech, but then you don't, with what you're doing with folks, you don't necessarily, and this is one of the things, going back to it, I've got a couple people coming in next year who we're going to be talking about this a little bit more, but if you've seen some of the episodes this year, this is really what's changing the game for immersive tech and being able to use the metaverse is you no longer have to be a game designer to create things in the metaverse. Is that a reasonable statement, Edward? Would you agree with that?
Kind of, sort of. You kind of have
Kind
to
of,
be
sort of.
a game programmer because the tools that you use to develop it, you've got to know those tools. So we've done
Okay.
that on the front end because a business case, they're concerned with the business case. They're not concerned with how you solve it.
Okay.
If a business case is, hey, we got a large piece of equipment we need to sell in a virtual platform, we've got the solution for that where you've got a multiplayer version where we can create a 3D version of that, put it in this room, and then the prospect and the salesperson can log into that little mini sales metaverse and talk about this equipment that we can
Okay.
enable in a 3D format where it can work just like it's on the plant floor. So
Okay.
so again, it's more of you're taking the gaming technology and programming expertise and applying it to a business purpose at a price where it makes sense for the business to use it.
Okay. So let's talk about this a little bit. And again, let me replay that back because I think, some folks, and one example with this as a good example where we're seeing a lot about Microsoft and Facebook. They're doing a lot with this right now with Horizon, things like AltSpace, and there's another one too that they've got going where they've actually created the environments and the capabilities, and then you can build into it what you're trying to do. And you're saying you're doing something similar, not with their technology, but you've built something where, because we talked a little bit about the fact that your avatars aren't cut off at the hips, right? All right. I got a nod from you, and I actually know the answer to this because you shared it with me before. But that's one of the differences in your environments. But the point is that we're democratizing these environments where we can then recreate things in there and design around it. But I'm curious from your end, Edward, what are some of the areas you've mentioned a few things, which is sales environments, things like that. One of the things that I see a lot is a lot of times people think the only place you can use this stuff is safety simulations, things like that. Where are you using some of these from a simulation standpoint that might give people ideas of different places you might be able to use the metaverse?
Yeah, everything we're doing is, I don't want to say replacing it, it's augmenting what they've done in the past. Like a junior
Okay.
achievement, they do career expos where they have you people go into the schools and talk about their jobs. So we've got a platform where the people that would normally go into the school, they an avatar, and then they can meet the kids into the space. For someone like Medtronic, they have a really high end medical device, and they're interested in how can they show a place like a Cleveland Clinic this, but and not have to take it there. So now we're doing something for all of the organizations in that region up there, whether it's Harley Davidson or something, like we're getting them interested in having just a virtual space that they can show things quickly. So
Okay.
anytime there's a need that can use this type of technology, we've got it. And then every time we do a project, the revenue we get from those projects fund us getting more laptops, getting more space, and things like that.
Okay. I am curious from your side, because you've been doing this for a while. How have you seen greater adoption of this over the last, let's say, 2 years? Are people more open to these digital environments than you've seen historically?
Could you say? I think could you cut your snowflakes off a little bit, because that's, I think we
Yeah.
talked about that
Here, let's.
earlier.
All right. Let me
That's
let me let
causing
me kill
jumps in
my
money.
snowflakes. There you go. We'll do that, and we'll see if that helps.
There we go.
Um,
Okay,
my
could you ask
question
that
is,
question again, please?
yeah, go for it. So my question is, there's some kind of like hesitation around the metaverse. I sometimes find people are a little hesitant. I'm curious if over the last year and a half, 2 years, with everything that's been going on, are you seeing greater adoption? Are people more open to exploring these digital environments as a possible alternative to what they've been doing before?
Oh yeah, I mean, especially from our standpoint. First of all, we have a mission, a quality mission, and secondly, we can offer it at a price that they can afford. If it's something that they can afford, and the good thing about it, they can see it. A lot of times everything is you got to develop it first for them to see it. No, this is
Okay.
here's a link. You can see it, and then they like, wow, I can do this for my product. How much is it? Oh, I can afford that. So
Okay.
again, the point is, you're bringing very expensive technology that's in a very expensive space to actual business purposes at budgets that it can be applied to. The hesitancy is normally in budgets.
Okay.
If they got enough money to try it and see, they'll do that.
Okay.
So and that was our plan in the first place. We wanted to have it at a low enough budget to where people can do it, gives us enough projects that we can train young women on. So it's a dual purpose. We're not just
Okay.
doing it. Put it that
Okay.
way.
Okay. Well, and I would say, to your point, I do think budgets have historically always been a hesitation around this. I mean, I remember years ago getting a quote on doing a custom environment. I mean, it was close to $500,000 for one environment, and it was just unattainable, because to maintain it and things like that, a lot of organizations just feel like, well, I just can't do that. But that's not the case now, and I think it hasn't been the case with you for quite. I should have got a quote from you back when I was doing this, because it probably would have been significantly less expensive. But with that, in addition to budget stuff, because there's some, the technical acumen of users is not always as high as we'd like it to be. So I'm curious, do you see that like end users struggle at all with getting used to the metaverse, like going in and logging into this, or are they pretty quick to pick it up like Zoom?
I mean, a lot of the times I think I missed some of your question, but I'm gonna try and extrapolate from that. Um,
Okay.
a lot of solutions are expensive because they're applying expensive principles to it. So if you start off from scratch and you develop
We are going to have to get a VR version. We are going to have to get a VR version of Edward, I think. You're in here twice now, so there you go. You're back.
Oh, can you? Okay, there we go.
I can hear you. I can hear you.
Am I okay
No, my
now?
Yeah, you're good. My question around it was, in addition to the cost though, from an adoption and usability standpoint, do people run into barriers? Do they pick it up pretty quick, or do you have to do a fair amount of front end stuff to get them comfortable with like logging into a digital environment?
Oh, we actually created. We call it our move wheel, and that's
Your
for
move wheel.
anyone that's not a gamer. It's easy for them to move their character around just by dragging a circle within a circle, and that's usually the adoption hesitation. If a
Okay.
lot of your metaverses are driven by keyboard controls, AWSD, arrow keys, and all of that type of stuff to move around within the virtual space, and that's primarily for gamers. So if you're a
Yep.
non-gamer, we just have a little circle that drag around, and your character moves in that direction. And then the further you move it up, they run and they walk. So so far the people that have been testing it, they love it because it's like, wow, I'm in a game and it's me, and I can
Okay.
move around.
Okay. Okay. Well, and I think, if I pull this slide in here, as an example, because you talked about this a little bit. So this is one of your environments, correct?
You got a which slide did you put up?
It's the slide with the humanistic
There we
3D
go.
characters.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
This is
that's
one
one
we're
of your
working
environments,
for.
right?
Yes. This is our sales. Actually, it's going to be used for a business expo. So if you see those buttons to the left there, it actually has a whiteboard, a video conferencing that works just like Zoom, and it's got a site. But these are our characters. So these characters look very realistic. And then that the little move wheel down at the right, as you move that, your character moves with it. So it takes very short time to see how to move your character around in that. And that's usually the problem. If it's hard for you to do something, you tend to turn away from it and say it's not good. So we make it really easy. So each of those characters you see in there could be actual people logged in talking to each other in that space, unlike the other, the cut off at the waist, look like cartoons and things like that. And some that gets to that, what is it called, the uncanny ladder or something like that, where you've got characters cut off at the waist, like, whoa, you spending time trying to figure out what that is.
Okay. And when you're talking about, yeah, so we're talking about this, which a lot of people, this is what they think of right now when they're thinking of Meta is either the Facebook or Microsoft version where you've got no legs, essentially, correct? Are you still hearing me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. So the example with let's talk a little bit about character design, in the sense that, some of these new platforms are focused on these half characters that'll look a little bit more cartoony. You've taken more the approach of realistic. So if we look at, theirs versus, let's see, I think where did yours go? Like right here, where you've got realistic characters. I'm curious the why. I'm curious your kind of take on what's the difference between a realistic version of yourself versus this kind of completely abstract character or somewhat realistic. Is there a reason that you've taken the full design of humans?
Yeah, one reason they're doing that is for technical reasons. And for example, all of them are going for a more global metaverse or a broad reach. So they have to watch bandwidth just like everybody else. So it's less bandwidth when you've got a cartoon character with half a body than you have a realistic character. So, but when we're doing private metaverses, a company's not going to have 30 million people.
Okay. So We'll see. We'll see if he jumps back in. I'll kind of ad lib. Speaking of bandwidth issues, right? Like we're talking. It's almost Christmas, so I'm in a good mood anyway. Who cares what the bandwidth is right now? But I think the point that he's getting at, for those of you who may be listening, is that this is kind of an interesting piece. Is we're seeing a lot of this as to why are Facebook and Microsoft deciding to do these half bodies, because I've actually seen some pretty heated debates over this, and when you think about it, there's a fair amount of rendering and stuff that has to happen when you have the bottom half. So if you're a learning professional and you're considering some of this stuff, we'll let Edward jump back in on it. But this is something that you have to think about. If you're taking this on a more global scale, you've got to be considering whether or not, are you going to have folks who are on a hotspot like Edward is today? Or is it going to be someone like me that's on, a 1 megabit connection? Although I've had my connectivity issues as well, because those are all factors that we have to consider as we think about where things are at. So I will say it is throwing me for a little bit. I apologize in advance if anybody's listening to this after the fact, because we've been back and forth a bit. Hang on. We'll see if he can get in. He may be totally dead in the water. Oh, nope. We got another location for you, Edward.
Yeah, it's they're in front of our house.
I'm not even sure I'm hearing you right now. We're losing Edward again. So we'll see what happens here. If we keep having connectivity issues, I may pull the plug on this one a little bit early today, just for everybody's sake. Because I think the point that we're trying to make with a lot of this is, and if you haven't, I did in the comments drop Edward's company's website address, because in terms of going back to this, I think some of the big points that we need to think about as learning professionals as we're looking at what's going on with the metaverse is, one, there's a lot of misconceptions of what this stuff is and how it can be used. So I think, one of the big things is if you're thinking meta, you're hearing meta, you're considering some of this environment stuff, really it's as broad as where might we be able to create digital versions of folks in a digital world where we can remove some of the rules and barriers. And I think when you think about it simplistically like that, it does open up a lot in terms of what you may or may not be able to do. Because if you're thinking about it in terms of, well, we have to have hardware, we have to have expensive custom environments that we have to do. Yes, if you're putting those artificial barriers on yourself, then absolutely it may be outside the reach of, what you're trying to accomplish. But if you think about it purely as where can we create an environment where people can create a digital version of themselves and engage and interact in a 3D world, and what kind of possibilities does that open up? It's the possibilities are endless. I mean, again, thinking back to the conversations I've had with Pepsi, with what they were doing with Minecraft. I mean, they were allowing people to create Minecraft characters and go into this space. All right, Edward, you're back. Can you hear me? Are you there?
Hello?
I can hear you. Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
No, I can't hear you.
'Tis the season. This is the fastest streaming that I've seen.
I'm trying to go outside and everything to see if I can get this to work.
Well, I can see and hear you better than I could before, but now it's not working. So I don't know if you're...
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I could hear you perfect. You were streaming in HD before. You just couldn't hear me.
Okay, I'm gonna stand right here. I'm at the front door. I'm so sorry. Yeah, we
Don't
don't
worry
where
about it.
I'm at. We don't have good cell connection, and since our Xfinity is down, I can only use my laptop with cell connection, and it's we just don't have it, right
Okay.
here.
Well, you know what? It's totally fine because again, we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out, and we're making the best of it as we go. But again, going back to this, you were talking about kind of the technical requirements of building and creating full 3D rendered versions of people, and why that is a consideration to keep in mind if you're doing this on a global scale or things like that. Because much like this conversation, your bandwidth does make a difference. Is that a reasonable
Right.
technical piece you've got to consider?
Yeah, definitely. One thing, if people know about video games, that's why you have consoles. So the consoles have all the horsepower, and those games are like 2 and 3 gigabytes each.
Okay.
When you've got the 2K and whatnot. Now, what we've done, we're able to get our whole platform, that whole 3D thing, under 200 meg, which is very small. So we've been
Really?
able to compress all of the characters and everything. We still can keep it under 300 meg, and then that's using WebGL. So you can run that whole program right on your browser. You don't have to install any software or anything like that. We spent a lot of time, and we're using a lot of compression techniques in order to do that. Because one of the biggest issues to adoption is technical adoption. If you can't
Okay.
get it to run, you can't get it to run, or you can't get people to use it, you got a problem. And we spent a lot of time addressing both of those.
Okay. Okay. Well, and I think for learning professionals, that's when you were kind of cutting out, I was ad-libbing for you a bit. But I think
Thank you.
that's an important, yeah, hey, well, no problem. And now we figured out if you stand exactly there, we're good. So, we've gotten to see Edward in all different positions and locations throughout the course. We could redo the icebreaker over and over if we wanted to. Um, but the point is, that is something that people need to consider because you may be jumping into a project and starting to dabble in metaverse work, but you do need to take these technical considerations into place because some of these really cool hybrid, digital environments, they look amazing, but the access and capability for people to regularly use it can be limiting. So I think your point of making sure you're digging into that is an important factor, is it not?
Yes, yes. And again, most people in the metaverse space that are approaching it, they're approaching it from a broad-based standpoint. They're trying to reach a
Okay.
lot of people.
Okay.
So in that case, they kind of dismiss the people that have bandwidth issues. So that they're looking at most people would have the bandwidth that they're going with. Whereas what we're doing, since it's a private metaverse and we can keep the file sizes small, we don't have that problem because everybody's,
Okay.
even a regular internet connection can actually pull up ours, because what it does, it's a 260 meg file that then downloads to your computer and it caches. So the next
Okay.
time you access it, it's not trying to get it from the internet.
Okay.
So again, if that's your target, is smaller organizations to take advantage of this technology, you apply the technology accordingly. But if your target is
Okay.
broad based, you're not looking at it like that.
Okay. Well, and I think, it's interesting because this conversation, we could have gotten into this earlier. I think that's not just something that as learning professionals we need to consider when it comes to metaverse stuff. Because there's a lot of stuff out there that, when we're thinking about, HD video sharing and community building and things like this, technical requirements, you really have to consider where your audience is, because I've been involved in a number of projects with organizations in the past where they overestimated the technical access that the audience had, and it actually just torpedoed the project, because when people went to use it, it was such a bad experience because they just did not have either the hardware to run it or actually the internet access. So it sounds like you're kind of democratizing, not only bringing this from an affordability standpoint, but even from an access standpoint, by not requiring 8 gig downloads in the background to actually run the environment. Yes. I'll answer.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah. Go for it.
Yeah, I mean that's the main reason for doing it is to have versions that people can use to actually use it. Everybody's having the connectivity problem with youth due to COVID and now Omicron. So they're looking at ways to at least be able to address that because who knows, we might have COVID-20. So you need to have something in place
Oh, please don't say
whenever
that.
that happens again, where you can easily reconnect with people using the technology that they already have.
Okay. All right. Well, I don't want to talk about preparing for COVID-20, but no, but to your point, I think it is it is an important factor. So we've talked about some of the limitations in terms of finance because I think that's an important one to consider. We've talked about the hardware piece and the access. I am curious now with your environments and how you're thinking about this because hardware is a factor, right? It can be a factor depending on things. I think of a lot of people's work laptops. A lot of people aren't getting high-end machines. We're getting, you're getting a Dell Omni Pro, something from 2010 with the bare minimum. Is that an issue? Do you run into that often where people's computers just struggle to even be able to run some of this stuff? I'll ask it again if you didn't hear me. He's back outside. We're watching Edward on the move. I should just like narrate his navigation. All right.
Can you hear
While
me?
he's, I can hear you. I just don't know if you can hear me.
Yeah, it's a little hard hearing you.
So my question is, from a hardware standpoint, well, now we lost Edward. We're getting so close to the top of the hour. I think I may just call. I may have some closing thoughts here, and then just wrap it up. We'll have to reconvene and continue this conversation in 2022 because the reality is the metaverse isn't going anywhere. And I think some of the things, while broken up throughout the conversation, and Toby, I appreciate your comments. I think there's a lot of good things that you hit on there that people need to consider because this isn't going anywhere. And I continue to push people. I was on an analyst call at the beginning of 2021 when there was talks about this, and there's been a lot of hesitancy around, is this really going to get traction? Is this something that people are actually going to find value in? And I think the short answer is yes, absolutely. But we have to think about it carefully. So, if you even amidst some of the broken up conversation throughout here, there's a lot of things that we have to consider as professionals with this. This isn't something that, we can just run into headlong and make everything in the metaverse. We've got to do it carefully. And Toby, you hit on that. So Edward, I don't know, can you hear me? There was one other question I had, and then I was just going to kind of wrap us up. Can you hear me now?
Can you hear me? This is
I
terrible.
can hear you.
I can't go outside because all the Xfinity trucks are in the neighborhood and I can't hear.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay, go ahead. I got to get close to my iPad. For some reason, it's really low on my end, but
Okay.
I think I can make it for now.
Okay, so the last question, and then we'll wrap it up, is from a hardware standpoint. We said you don't have to have a headset, but a lot of people's work computers are refurbished. They may not have a dedicated video card. Is that an issue when people are considering the metaverse?
Oh man, I'm so sorry. Anyway, you could text that in chat. I'm sorry.
Yeah, if you can see
yours is not coming out. Oh, okay. What are some use cases? Is that
No. Here we go.
If you could, if you can hear me,
Yeah, I can hear you.
type, because I can't hear you for some reason. It's real choppy. If you could type the question and text, I got the text thing up right here.
We lost him again. Cliffhanger too, because I'm sure folks, Reba, I saw your comment on here, which I think is spot on. I know I deal with this not just with metaverse stuff. I deal with this with LMS or LXP things like that, where sometimes people's computers just are an issue. So Edward, it sounds like you can hear me now, but I am curious how you work around people's bad computers. A lot of people have bad computers. All right. I'm gonna go ahead. Yeah, he's trying to type me, but I'm not thinking he's even seeing my private chats here. So anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and wrap us up because it doesn't seem like we're getting any better here. But again, I think the big message is for folks, and we'll talk again. I can promise you, I've got a few of these scheduled in 2022 where we're gonna be talking about this at length. About some other use cases, ways we're doing it. I'm actually going to be doing a roundtable in the Learning Sharks community on the metaverse and how to design for the metaverse and what we might be able to do with it. So definitely would encourage folks to join that, be part of this discussion, because the reality is it is opening up the possibilities, and I think that's a really important factor when you think about it broadly, like we talked about, where the metaverse is not. It's not just a VR environment. It's not just this one thing. Then there's a lot more possibilities in terms of what you can do with it. And so I think as you think about that, it's not a gimmick as we go into 2022 and thinking about how and where and what you might be able to do with that. Not saying run out and do it tomorrow, but be starting to think, where might a digital environment actually augment, not necessarily replace. I had a conversation with somebody about this the other day. It doesn't have to replace everything. It doesn't need to replace what you're doing, but it can augment the things that you're doing today where you may have limitations. It's a good point, Reba, but unfortunately, there's no way to call in, and he's actually on a mobile device right now. So I'll get Edward back in another time, maybe next year when Xfinity isn't kicking everybody out. So let's see if you're here on phone now. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, yeah. I'm on the phone now.
Okay. We should have done that from the beginning. Apparently that's working better. I was just saying there's a lot of considerations for folks to think about as they consider this, and I think the work you're doing is helping bringing it to the masses, but it's something that, you shouldn't just dive into head first. But it should absolutely be something that you're considering as you're going into this, whether you're an instructional designer, a learning leader, a business leader. There's a lot of challenges we can solve with this because it does remove a lot of the physical limitations that we often have. We talked about it earlier with, if you're trying to sell a big piece of equipment, you can't tote it around with you. There's opportunities to create environments for people to interact where you may not be together physically, which I really hope Edward's prediction on COVID-20 doesn't come true. But the reality is we've got a long ways to go yet before, and I don't think we're going to go back. So any kind of closing thoughts from your end, Edward?
Yeah, and you hit it right on the head. Even if we don't get COVID-20, the whole dynamics have changed because it just might happen again. Look with Omicron, I was going back up. So the main thing is have a way of creating these environments at a cost-effective and easy to use way. It's not always just cost-effective. It's got to be usable. And then you can try it out more. Usually when things are too costly or too complex from a navigational standpoint, it's hard for adoption. So, and that's kind of where we're trying to bring it. And of course, that helps grow our program because we have enough projects. If you in my PowerPoint, you see we're trying to acquire a large department store, and we're going to fill it up with desktops with young women working on projects. And if we got enough of these going around, that's what's going to really grow that effort.
Okay. Okay. Well, and I think that's what you're doing. I absolutely love what you're trying to do with this. Not only because you're democratizing, this capability to organizations who may think it's out of reach, but you're also serving a really important social cause as well. And I think, where we find opportunities to do those kinds of things, it's a win-win. So I'm looking forward to where we go in 2022 with technology. And even though we had some technical difficulties, hey, you know what? It's the name of the game. I think if anything, it highlights the fact that this is the reality of the world we're in now, is that these are a lot of considerations you have to make, whether it's connectivity, whether it's hardware, whether it's access, all these things that we have to think about, which just requires us to know more about tech as we make decisions.
Right, exactly. And
Okay.
again, primarily it's the technology is here, but of course you always have issues. In my case, they're taking the whole community down so they can make it better. They just happen to do it on the day that I got this program.
But those are the realities we deal with in real life, right? Like
Yeah.
nothing ever goes according to plan. And I think sometimes it's like, well, so how do we work in those environments, and how do we pivot and adjust when that kind of stuff happens? And I think, hey, again, that's the reality of the world we're in today.
Exactly.
All right. Well,
Well, you
Edward,
can share our website. It talks about our web, on even our homepage shows what we're doing with the metaverse and things like that. So I'd appreciate that.
yeah, I put the comment, I put the website in the chat, so folks definitely check it out. You can connect with Edward on LinkedIn, and I appreciate you making the time. And hey, the patience between the two of us as we were dealing through the technical stuff, whatever, life happens, and I appreciate you making the time. I look forward to talking to you again in the new year, and I hope you have a great holiday break. Thanks everybody for joining. I hope you have a great rest of your year and a wonderful kickoff to 2022. I'll see
Yeah,
you
and
on the
thank
other
you all for
side.
joining. Sorry about my issues with Xfinity, and
Hey,
looking forward to 2022. You all have a blessed holiday, Christmas holiday, and New Year's coming up.
all right, sounds good, Edward. We'll talk to you on the other
All
side.
right, take care.